Pokemon fans, Tamashii here. When X and Y first came out, I made a top 10 list of my favorite new Pokemon from that game. Since then I've had time to really marinate on the newcomers, and figure out who I really love and who I really don't. So now that I have a little perspective, it's time to count down my top 10 least favorite X and Y Pokemon. But there's a little problem. The Kalos Dex is really small, and I personally don't have more than 5 I dislike. So today I'm going to call in some help from a Poketuber who's known as a Brandon to the past. We'll each pick 5 of our least favorites from the Kalos Dex, and alternate explaining what they are and why we don't like them, to add up to a full top 10.
If both of you couldn't think of more than 5, then how could this possibly be a well-organized list? You would have to debate and discuss the entries, so wouldn't that invalidate your intro since you would have gotten some new perspective on these listed mons? Unless you just merge the two lists together, then, well, your list would have no sense of proper progression. If you just did that, then why not just have them as 2 separate top 5, since, you know, there's no actual rule to the amount of entries?
Okay, Zero, I'll give you this. That was a pretty solid point. Minus one thing. When was it ever said that Brandon couldn't think of more than 5? Okay, fine. Yeah, Tamashii flat out admitted that she herself had problems thinking of entries for the list, which was really stupid on her part, but she never said anywhere in the intro that Brandon had trouble too. Take this point for a grain of salt, everything here is technically hypothetical, but the wording here is just poor to the point of annoyance, as this point is delegated down to nothing more than an assumption without many factors to help back them up. Now, putting this aside, I do have to point out that this list itself that they're covering is labeled as a top least favorites list, and while I do believe that the opinion card excuses and mean much as your reasoning can be criticized, I'd like you all to keep this in mind for later, because wow, this is going to bite them hard.
So without further ado, let's get started. Number 5.
Didn't you just say this was a top 10 list?
God dang it, Gale. Okay, now first off I'd like to address the possibility of this being more of a joke, in which case, Gale, your delivery is terribly poor. As throughout this video, the tone remains nearly the same throughout the video, sarcasm and all. Also, before the fact that somebody brings up that Gale had an emphasis on the word 10, that still means she could have been emphasizing the number to bring the point further. As such, my point still holds weight. Now, the point in itself I also have some issues with. It really wouldn't make much sense for the list to be going down at, say, 1 at a time, numbering it all, then it would be misleading to how much that person dislikes the Pokemon they're talking about. And technically, while not exactly being a top 10, it still is a top 10. Kind of. Like, okay, there's still 10 entries altogether. This is confusing. Really, nobody here is in the right. Tamashii and Brandon for being too lazy to make their own, or just not canning said project entirely, and Gale for this point just being really lackluster.
Any of these Pokemon very much, if at all. So it was really difficult to make choices for this list.
Then why make it a worst list? You imply that these Pokemon are the ones you have big problems with. If you don't have many problems with them, then don't make a worst list. Just make a top 5 list of Gen 6 Pokemon I'm not all that fond of. Unless, of course, you're just trying to stir up controversy with this topic so the better Pokemon YouTubers don't continue to overshadow you.
You're already stretching to find problems with a lot of these mons, and you needed someone else's top 5 just to artificially make it a top 10 list. And saying you don't really dislike any of these mons destroys the foundation of this entire video.
Even if we were deciding to judge these Pokemon based on them being objectively the worst Pokemon in Generation 6, why is Sylveon there?
Spoilers! Spoilers! Everybody cover your ears! Okay, in all seriousness, I have an issue with TP's statement. I have to question, why bring up Sylveon now? To elaborate on this confusing point, let me point out that on this list, Sylveon was the first Pokemon to show up on Tamashii's portion. While your complaint about Sylveon being an OU is still valid, I question why it wasn't brought up when you actually get to this point. You can still connect it to the misleading title and it can flow so much better without spoiling your audience like a basement dweller Star Wars fan. I just have to question the placement here, and what this may just be a nitpick, it can be kind of off-putting to those who actually never watched their list to begin with.
Shop at the shop, you can get some delicious sweet buns. They'll heal you in battle, but you better not get any fights or I'll kill.
Evolutions in general aren't really my favorite as a group, simply because they're too gimmicky and they only really get more gimmicky as time goes on. I tend to enjoy them as individual Pokemon, just not part of the evolution brand, so to speak.
How are the evolutions a gimmick? I could maybe see that for why Eevee can evolve to 8 different types of Pokemon, but that's only a gimmick within Pokemon lore, not in the Pokemon themselves, especially not in the individual evolutions.
You mean to tell me that having so many different options for what to evolve your Eevee into isn't appealing to you? You mean you don't like the idea of being able to use an evolutionary stone to evolve your Eevee earlier on, unlike many other mons that evolve via evolutionary stone needing to wait until later levels, or else they lose access to the good moves in their level up move pools?
Gale! Kiss my fluffy-tailed ass! No! No! Do not tell me you're gonna be pulling this with the whole entire commentary. this is where the whole entire least favorites thing comes into play. I said it earlier, heck, I said it to other Pokétubers multiple times. But the its opinion card means nothing if your reasoning is garbage. That being said, when we break down what Tamashii was doing in this part, the most she was going on was just saying that she finds the evolutions as a gimmick. Which, no, you're wrong. But let's look at how Gale decided to counteract that reasoning. She said, and I quote, "You want to tell me having so many evolutions of what to evolve your Eevee into isn't appealing to you?" Gale, honey, I guess somebody used rain dance because your argument is all wet. Again, this is part of Tamashii's least favorites list, and if she doesn't find anything appealing, fine. If you're going to be critiquing something that she says, actually critique her reasoning, not the fact that she has her own opinion.
Shop at the shop, you can get some delicious sweet buns. They'll heal you in battle, but you better not get any fights or I'll kill.
All of the other evolutions have something that make them stand out from the others. Umbreon's design has elements taken from non-canon animals and beings of legend, e.g. the moon rabbit. Espeon has a forked tail that makes it resemble the Nekomata. Vaporeon has fins which make it more fish-like compared to the others. And Leafeon is more plant-based to match it being a grass type, just to name a few. So how is Sylveon so different from the others?
Because Sylveon's girly, and that makes her an affront to women's rights.
I will end.
Oh wow, this joke actually kind of frustrates me, not gonna lie. This joke first for two reasons in particular. One, you kind of have to know the context to understand this joke. Okay, for those who are lost, let me show you the way. If it wasn't for the fact that I complete this comm, I'd be exiting right now. Anyway, about 3 years ago, Tamashii ended up making a list about the top 10 ugly, shiny...
like a treasure from a sunken...
Pokemon. One of the entries in the list was Lopunny, mostly for being pink. And obviously most people came to the conclusion it was for feminism, pink equals female and all that jazz. Now, see, here's the thing. This commentary came out around the time of 2015. Tamashii's shiny list was created in 2015 exactly. Knowing this, I could come to the conclusion they were referring that video. Now, to anybody who never knew of that video's existence, your joke is simply made confusing as we don't know exactly what the bloody Tartarus, Hell, Detroit you're referring to, and comes off as you painting Tamashii some kind of weird, rabid feminist. Granted, that could be backed up given one of the entries lower on the list, but as it is now, the joke just kinda gets hit by rollouts or flat. Wonder how many Pokemon puns they can fit into this commentary.
I understand that Sylveon is special now because it's the newest of the group and it was the first to represent a new type.
Ignoring how Umbreon was pretty much the first Dark-type Pokemon introduced.
But what are they going to do when they have to introduce new ones later and Sylveon still sticks out and clashes with the rest of the group?
Nice pointless hypothetical. Here's another pointless one. What if the next ones introduced are more similar to Sylveon? Are you gonna pitch more then, too?
Is every new evolution from now on going to break the mold and have a strikingly different look and anatomy? If so, they won't have the same harmony as a group anymore. Their family photos will just start to look cluttery.
You just explained why Sylveon looks so different from the others and why it works for it. It's a fairy type! It's supposed to look different. It's supposed to look otherworldly. You know, like a fey creature would!
Pause! Hey, they're a prick! Since I know you in particular at this video, mind explaining what this cluttered mess is? Literally 30 seconds ago you had Tamashii saying that Sylveon was a fairy type, and you choose now to interject at this point? Seriously, this is the second time in this video where the placement of a point would have made things flow much better. Watching this video again, the moment I saw Tamashii say that, I thought, wait, there's a point waiting for you right there. Why did nobody shoot the darn thing? Then Gale comes in here unfashionably late, and I'm like, well, it took you guys long enough.
The Dedenne is one of the new fairy-type Pokemon, but doesn't it look familiar? It looks like Raichu and Hamtaro got together and had a baby. It's just another Pikachu and Raichu clone. Did we seriously need another one of those?
Meryl, Plusle, Minun, Pachirisu, and Emolga are all Pika clones, yet I don't hear any complaints about those. Just saying, you really can't just complain about the one when several are guilty of adding to the Pika clone roster.
Unless he does, and it's only talking about Duntana because Gen 6, but with no mention on any of the other ones, I don't blame anyone who questions this bound of possible hypocrisy.
Point used fly! Point never came back down, because Gale! TP! What was the point of this? Well, yeah, there may be multiple fakers. Anybody who thinks I'm going to make a Sonic reference, screw you, I have some dignity. It doesn't invalidate Brandon's point that Dedenne is just a Pikachu clone. Considering that the fact that this list is focusing primarily on Gen 6 Pokemon as a whole, this brings up another problem. Brandon isn't at all inclined to mention those other clones. For frick's sake, TP, for all we know, Brandon could have had a problem with these other Pikachu and Raichu clones, but just didn't mention it. And honestly, it would have been better if Brandon didn't, because if we did it, it would be going terribly off topic. Like, say it was making a worst unit of a Pokemon list and decided to talk about the Patrat line. I go on a tangent and then bring up all the other non-Pikachu rodent Pokemon that have appeared throughout the franchise. There would be a 4-episode hypothetical video. They came to hear me talk about why that Pokemon be one of the worst. TLDR, Brandon would have gotten off topic and would have dragged on. We don't want a Green Scorpion countdown, folks.
So anyway, Pyroar's thing is that it has high special attack, but its hidden ability is Moxie, which raises physical attack every time a Pokemon with Moxie knocks out a Pokemon. So were the folks at Game Freak just not paying attention when they decided on this?
Hidden abilities aren't always better for the Pokemon. Sometimes it is, but all it's meant to be is just another option. Sometimes an ability is a hidden ability because Game Freak wants a Pokemon's 2 main abilities to be one thing, want the possibility of other builds for a Pokemon.
Well, they weren't paying attention at first when they gave the Ladyball line Swarm as an ability when it wasn't even able to learn bug moves via level up or TM until Diamond and Pearl, and even beforehand in Ruby and Sapphire, the only bug move it could learn was Silverwind, via breeding. This is far from the first time Game Freak dropped the ball.
It's far from the first time Game Freak dropped the ball, and it's far from the first time that you've made an idiotic point, Gale. How does your mind operate? No, please, tell me. Game Freak may have dropped the ball before in the past, but that still doesn't justify how this was done with Pyroar. Actually address the bad reasoning, then respond with, derp, this has been done in the past, thereby rendering the problem you have this Pokemon bad by default. This whole point could have been taken out of commentary altogether, and messing of substance would have been lost.
Implying Pyroar can't go mixed.
I suppose it's possible to raise a mixed attacking Pyroar, relying on the boost from Moxie to power your physical attacks, and knocking out the first few Pokemon with special only.
TP, why? Why must you rapidash my hopes and dream eaters? Why?
The Pokemon puns are getting a bit too much.
This is just my judgment hour. What can I say? I like punishment. Okay, no, that isn't what I meant. Please be gentle.
Something I noticed while watching this, MasterTP10, you say right before the next point implying that you can't go mixed. Of your next interjection, it cuts back to Tamashii herself and making you even have a mixed Pyroar set. I'm just confused. You didn't even cut Tamashii off. This was just not listening. I would advise just paying more attention to the video next time if that's okay with you.
Never again! Never ever again!
But I've never seen anybody try it, so I don't know how that would work out. If you ever run it, let me know how it went.
Yeah, Moxie seems strange for Pyroar, and yes, its attack stat isn't that good, and yes, a physical or mixed build for Pyroar isn't ideal, but at least you can make both work. It's not like Flareon's hidden ability of Guts that can only work if it's poisoned or paralyzed thanks to the fact that Flareon can't be burned. Refer back to what I said about Game Freak dropping the ball in the past. Also, if you're really looking to hidden abilities as a factor, there are plenty of other Kalos mons that got screwed by their hidden abilities, or got hidden abilities that were redundant. The Scatterbug line, Friend Guard, an inferior version of Telepathy which already only works in double and triple battles. Skittle line, Grass Pelt, only works in grass or when grassy terrain is used, meaning it's very situational and hampered further by the fact that the Skittle line can't learn grassy terrain. Deden, Plus, can only work in a double or triple battle if one of its partners has plus or minus as an ability, of which only 11 Pokemon can have those abilities, and all of them are weak to ground. High Earthquake, Pancham line, Scrappy. Sounds good in theory, but Pangoro is part Dark type, and both mons in the line have access to Dark type moves. Noibat line, Telepathy, only works in double and triple battles, and is inferior to its regular abilities thanks to Telepathy being mostly used for Earthquake, which the line is already immune to.
I mean, we still have other moves to worry about, like Explosion, which is one of the most powerful normal type moves, as well as Surf, which will probably do more than you think, considering Noibat's special defense is absolute garbage, but details.
You like Butterfree and Beautifly, then you're going to love Vivillon, because it's pretty much the same exact thing. Yep, that's right, another Butterfly Pokemon, even sharing the same typing as well. The only difference here is that Vivillon is a gimmick Pokemon that can change its wing patterns to make it look prettier, which is neat, but it doesn't help it in battle. Its weakness to Stealth Rock and common attack types, together with it being frail in general, means that Vivillon is prone to being revenge kill, and it's hard to get on the battlefield in the first place. Even though it's Pokemon number 666 is anything but badass or evil, it's more of a collective ability Pokemon. Besides that, it's pretty much useless.
I love how in my segment going over different Kalos mons' hidden abilities, I gave a better reason for Vivillon being on Brandon's list than he did. Not only is Friend Guard a crappy hidden ability, but its regular abilities of Shield Dust and Compound Eyes are actually pretty useful in battle, and its hidden ability just makes those two abilities look that much better by comparison.
One thing I noticed, all Brandon does is complain that these Pokemon aren't competitively viable, when these Pokemon aren't meant to be like that. Even if you want to make the argument that there's a metagame that Game Freak intentionally built, I can counter that with Pokemon's main genre. Pokemon is an RPG first and foremost, so of course they would focus on world building with having some Pokemon that aren't competitive. Oh, boo-hoo, your fucking butterfly can't compete with a dragon. Of course it can't, because in universe and story, it's a fucking butterfly!
And inside universe story, Pokemon like Galeforce and Clefairy. And when you can make the argument that they're both fairy types, Clefairy is a jangling set of keys, and Galeforce could easily be seen as a fragile maiden. And yet both Pokemon competitive-wise or outside can manage to completely screw over dragons, and not in the kinky sense. Really, your point was doing so well, but your wording at the end of the point is just so many new levels of poor.
I suppose that makes sense for an iceberg, but they could have tried a little harder to make it functional. Fortunately, though it is susceptible to entry hazards, it can at least use rapid spin. So with some determination, the thing doesn't have to be completely useless. It just seems like a bit of a missed opportunity. They've made cool Pokemon—
Hey, don't think that ice pun would go unnoticed!
That pun wasn't very ice.
Guys, chill!
Murder!
based on all sorts of natural formations before, like volcanoes—
Camera-ups. Well designed. Shoot me.
It's going down! I'm yelling timber! You better move! You better dance! Okay, something I should have mentioned in this point before going into the joke. I feel like I should elaborate on this point further. Hey, Zerarick, I love how you respond with your own subjective opinion here, as if that's meant to debunk something. I mean, by your own logic, I could call out Torterra, Golem, and Trevenant for being same animals and for one reason being a tree, and just adding a face on them. I mean, for Christ's sake, at least your camera is a camel with volcanoes attached to it. Your point's just worthless.
Pad Pokemon looks cooler than this, but just not Avalugg.
You brought up Avalug's ice typing and its defensive problem, and brought up its high defense and vulnerability to entry hazards, yet you didn't address the arguably bigger problem with it having such a high defense and low special defense. It has a high defense when 3 out of the 4 types that ice is weak to are primarily physical attacking types, yet even they have access to special moves. So really, its high defense doesn't mean all that much. Not to mention that any decent fire-type special attacker can take out Avalugg in one hit. Granted, that's if that Avalugg doesn't have Sturdy as its ability, which it can have due to it being its hidden ability. Yes, it delays the inevitable, but it also gives it a chance to at least do a world of hurt on that Firemon, because as you pointed out, it has a high attack stat. What 2 powerful physical moves that can do a world of hurt on fire types can Avalugg lure via TM? Earthquake and Stone Edge, meaning your complaints hold even less water and that the only viable complaint you have about Avalugg is its freaking design!
I am so confused. So at first the point starts off sounding as if you're just be talking about how Tamashii missed a better point to make about Avalugg, and yet it soon transitions onto how Avalugg apparently isn't as bad as she's making it sound. I don't know, the change of topic just felt so drastic that I'm pretty sure I was hit with Confuse-Ray. Also, your advice is, Well, I can agree with Earthquake and Stone Edge to an extent. Keep in mind that the accuracy for Stone Edge isn't the best, and given how Avalugg is pure Ice type, it has no stab, making its use debatable at most. Plus, Avalugg's speed isn't great, so even if it does have this counter, it doesn't mean it'll be fast enough to actually use that coverage.
Go-Goat typically has an easy time setting up against most teams. Its low speed stat is its main drawback, as it leaves Go-Goat susceptible to most revenge killers. Along with this, its move pool isn't very good.
Last I checked, Go-Goat's move pool is actually pretty good. It learns Earthquake and Aerial Ace via level up, and Brick Break and Rock Slide via TM to help a bit with type coverage.
Earthquake not being as good as it could due to a mediocre attack stat and the fact that it wasn't stab, and Aerial Ace also wasn't stab and only has 60 base power, so good luck with that. Brick Break is fine I guess, but Rock Slide, again, no stab, and has less than 100 accuracy. Bite me. Well, I get the point of these examples as a whole to show that Go-Goat has impressive type coverage. Doesn't mean much if the moves aren't that great for said Pokemon.
And leaves it very predictable, which can cause problems for Go-Goat. There are many better grass type choices out there, and poor Go-Goat just doesn't cut the chase.
Are there better grass types to use on a team? Yes, but Go-Goat can still pull its weight. Also, you didn't bring up either of its abilities, which would have worked as a good criticism. Sap Sipper is a good ability, but it requires Go-Goat to be hit by a grass type move. When it's already a grass type Mon, not many Mons will be attacking it with grass type moves.
Now this point may be a bit situational, but why not just switch out? If one can predict the play an opponent will make, or easier yet the eye of the opponents, as X and Y are kind of the easiest Pokemon games, you can still get a boost in the stat. Now, yeah, most likely somebody will be forced to switch out to another Pokemon on their team, but by that time you can still get a free hit in the next Pokemon that switches in.
And I have in no way intended to speak for anybody else. I realize and admit that my biases inform my opinions of things.
And that automatically invalidates what you say, since you admit to not being able to separate your biases from actual fact. Please start to think. It's unbecoming of someone with your subcount to be so retarded.
And if you disagree with me, that's perfectly valid.
And that's why you close the comments. You can disagree with me as long as I don't have to see it. Jesus Christ. Why do people like you again?
This is simply my own interpretation of a few designs of a few Pokemon.
Honey, sometimes the currents are just blowing you could and are. Just saying things that don't exist.
They're not trying to cash shade at their designers and imply that anyone who worked on the game had sexist intent.
Which is why they said design perverted, sexist, and or deranged to women. Yeah, because calling a design that short doesn't imply that you think that, heavens forbid, you actually think your words through before posting them online.
This is a criticism based only on my own personal thoughts and feelings.
Okay, seriously, if your opponent has gone and vanished into the reverse ward, by the time this whole entire article will be finished, Zerarick will have stolen the whole entire show. I wouldn't mind this one large tirade, but considering it keeps going from Tamashii, Zerarick, SpongeBob, you have to wonder why your partners couldn't come and jump in. Did they just get bored scripting this whole thing? Like, chemistry was decent up till now, until you have you trying to steal a show like this.
Objectification is dumb. Does that mean you can't complain about Lapummy anymore? Also, this isn't a false equivalent because guess what? It's still fucking objectification of the male body. But hey, I guess in the land of Tamashii, as long as no one's complaining, it's not a problem. How do you have fans? I'm being honest here. How can any rational person tolerate the sheer hypocrisy?
I find it saddening this is actually gonna be important for later. Just gonna store this here.
Yeah, it happens, but there are lots and lots and lots of male or masculine characters with a wide variety of roles, body types, and representations, especially in video games.
And the same can be said for female characters, so shut up, you brats.
Okay, such as... Like, seriously, this is a good point in hindsight, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but Jesus freaking Christ, dead! You couldn't even be bothered to give any examples? What? Was it not worth your precious time? Was it too hard for you? So let me just do your job for you. And probably get better paid anyway. Want some examples of females with large roles and body types, Tamashii? Lara Croft. Katniss Evergreen. Heck, we're talking Pokemon, so how about freaking Cynthia, am I right? The cherry on top of the apple here, out of all the characters you decided to show for the males, I saw Superman. 2 words. Wonder Woman.
Considering they're both humanoid rabbit-based designs, with feminine and masculine characteristics respectively. But for another, the implication here is that masculine things are not attracted by nature.
Or we can look at how his ears are cranes, his stomach's a belt, and how he's a fucking construction worker!
Yep, let's just ignore the Mon line and the Hitmon lines, cause fuck logic, narrative is more important.
Here's the feminine thing. It is pretty. It even wolf whistles at you in case you don't get the message that this is the object of desire in question.
Curtains, blue!
Is at you. It's lumpy. It's conventionally unattractive and undesirable. This reinforces gender roles of both men and women in terms of who is the sexual object, and I feel like that's actually a lot more harmful to men than if Diggersby was just a sexualized male humanoid rabbit thing.
Fuck you, I'm swallowing dynamite. Finish the commentary without me, I'll be back for the final thoughts because I'm sure this explosion won't kill me.
Well, that was sure important. Okay, actually, while I'm at it, might as well hit Tamashii again. 2 things I have to say here. 1, while I don't agree with your ideas here, I do find it funny how you missed out on 2 things that actually could have supported your idea. I mean, seriously, cute charm, and ability to cause infatuation above physical contact, and klutz. So, ditzy females then. It's sad when even I can make a better example than you for your idea that I don't even agree with. Second, the whole entire idea of Diggersby. Well, I can see where you're coming from. Taking into consideration that unlike a Pokemon looks like Combee, evolution isn't determined by this Pokemon's gender. Taking this into consideration, it could ruin your sexual stereotype idea. The female Diggersby could be seen as big, attractive, and goes up to the norm of an attractive female character. The same could be said for male Lopunny, although I'm just going to leave it at that for obvious reasons.
So, if you're waiting for me to be picking a nit over a representation of masculinity for once, there you go.
First off, Cheek Pouch is a good in-battle ability. Giving it any sort of berry will make it last longer in battle no matter what the berry does normally. Second, Pickup is a good ability outside of battle. It allows it to pick up various items in the overworld when you're traveling, meaning it could pick up a lot of items, especially if you keep it in your team as an HM slave, which is what a lot of people use it for to begin with. Third, Huge Power is a great hidden ability for it. It has access to a lot of decent physical moves and can make a good physical attacker because of that ability.
Gale, stop! You continue to shit me while you were the worst out of commentaries in this whole entire commentary. Nothing you said was wrong, and that's such a good point. Too bad Tamashii never went into any details about this. This literally has nothing to do with why this Pokemon was on the list. You guys literally just got through showing the feminism argument, and how that was the main reason. This is all just pointless padding.
Furthermore, its fucking design is not supposed to be based on a fat, lazy slob. Think about it. Diggersby. Digger. It's part ground type. It looks a bit like the hiker trainer class, and it could very well take inspiration from construction workers and other blue-collar types, meaning it's nothing like the fat, lazy slobs you think it's supposed to represent! Finally, I call bullshit on putting an HM slave on a worst Mon list, much less at the #1 spot. The fact that it's an HM slave gives it a lot of out-of-battle utility, and its huge power hidden ability means it can be a surprisingly good physical attacker, meaning it's already better than a lot of HM slaves to begin with.
Oh my god, we're still going! This is straw man! You're gonna debunk things that Tamashii herself never even said!
Oh my fucking god. How do you have fans? How are you popular? This video is so shittily argued. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if people who didn't know who you are would assume that you're the laughingstock of the Countdown community. Being absolutely honest, Meta could have done better. It's laughable that even someone like me can see the flaws every time you try to argue competitive shit. And guess what? I personally don't like the competitive scene, so you know you suck at explain when I outclass you with my Pokemon knowledge. Then there's the shoddy editing. Learn to word, learn to use better images, and learn to act. And finally, keep your ideology out of your videos. You're not intelligent enough to argue anything related to it.
Oh! Really now? No! This point actually irritates me, considering you all barely ever got under cases for this. Besides the Furfu segment, I saw no instances of the editing being heavily criticized. And really now, the acting was poor. How freaking so? Really now, for a group in a community of stolen tenants to help others improve, I see little actual improving tips for these final thoughts. Honestly, these final thoughts end up giving me bad flashbacks to another commentary group. You probably all know it. The dastardly, decrepit, garbage waste of space known as the CanCom. And me and you, Zerarick, well, I guess we got something in common, because frick, something as minor as Pokemon, this wasn't worth getting this worked up over. In the CanCom, I went in with the sole intent of tearing Halo fan down. And your goal in this end comes off as nothing more than trying to tear down Tamashii just for the heck of it, because, well, she's Tamashii. Frankly, I don't even care if you have an edgy persona. You asked why she had fans more than once, and said you wouldn't be surprised if she was a laughingstock. Tell me that this isn't spiteful. Oh no! Oh wait! Ugh. Anyway, I guess I'll just move into my final thoughts. Okay, I'm gonna go one at a time here. Honestly, TP, I honestly don't know exactly what to say to you in particular. You've definitely improved from this and didn't really have any standout bad points. Really, the only issue I found with you in particular in this commentary was just a bad placement of points. Galeforce. You were by far the worst one out of the bunch in this comm. Well, yeah, you didn't have the obvious issue of spite, such as one of your other co-op partners. I found your screw-ups to be the most infuriating of the bunch. Making points against things that weren't even argued, making rather poor suggestions referring to movesets, going on pointless tangents that didn't need to be there, and the most annoying part, forgetting as a whole that this was the least favorites list. Really, I just suggest focusing the bigger picture instead of the other things surrounding it. Now, Zerarick, well, Gale may have had the worst points, you definitely annoyed me the most. Can't really explain why, but even with your edgy persona, you still came up with a major joke. And while that inherently isn't a bad thing, heck, I've learned that myself from my Dragon Comm. There was clear emotion fueling your points, and it really shows as the video progresses. Combine this with poor editing on your part, and I just feel kind of annoyed. I may not have seen much of your content, but dude, I know you're better than this.
Before I start the commentary proper, I want to make a disclaimer, given some of the reactions to my previous commentary. Regardless of what I think of the people I commentate on, regardless of the motivation behind the commentary, and regardless of what I say about the people I commentate on, the purpose of my commentaries are, and have always been, for the purpose of criticism and entertainment. How harsh you think I come off as, or how comically driven the commentary is, should not distract from actual arguments or legitimate criticisms directed towards you. Furthermore, criticism given in a severe manner can still be constructive. It just means the criticism won't be sugarcoated. If I ultimately come off as harsh, it won't be for the sake of being harsh. It'll just happen that it came off that way. Are we good? Well, I hope so, because I'm starting the commentary anyways.
It's ironic that TP is the one to point this out, but more on that later. Besides that, do you not see how being overly harsh and aggressive can cause your criticisms to be muddied? Like, yeah, sure, you can have points while being aggressive and harsh. However, if you become overly aggressive, it can not only cause you to over-exaggerate issues in a video, but the more harsh you are, the less likely it is that your target will actually listen and take the criticism. Yeah, it can still be constructive, but you gotta make sure the harsh criticism is done properly. God damn it, I'm foreshadowing!
Pokémon, the series where you capture and train these awesome creatures to become the very best like no one ever was. But for a series geared towards children, there's some weird, dark, and creepy stuff in this series that makes me question just how kid-friendly it really is. And that's what I'm counting down. These are my top 5 dark and creepy things in Pokémon.
You say that these things make the series not child-friendly, but there are plenty of things that have done and had worse that are still considered child-friendly. What, is it something special that needs note because it's fucking Pokemon? What, do you need a fucking parade for this stunning revelation that a company isn't treating its target audience like lobotomized slowpokes?
This is gonna be a good game.
I'm gonna argue this point more when it comes up later, but why place this point here? These are his opening statements. Wouldn't it make more sense to wait until he explains why he believes these moments aren't child-friendly and make this point there? Maybe I'm nitpicking, but you'd know about that, right, Zerarick? God damn it, I'm foreshadowing again!
the first generation.
He says while showing footage from the Gen 3 remakes.
Why does this matter? It's not like the fact that he's using visual clips from the Gen 3 remakes hurts his points in any way. Maybe he just wanted to show the Gen 3 remakes because that game looked better. Videos are an auditory and visual medium after all, so if he wanted to use better looking footage, he's free to. I would leave my point there, however, Gale actually elaborated on this better in a try-up with Doodle Tones and TP, so I want to play her clip.
My emoting of that line left a lot to be desired, I'll admit, but the thing is that there's plenty of difference between the two, and it's not just appearances. It was impossible for Charmander to learn Metaclaw in Gen 1, for example. Just seeing the footage can make people think about those differences. Not to mention, showing actual Gen 1 footage meant that he could have shown some subtle differences between Red and Blue and Yellow. Yellow was never adapted to Gen 3. Not to mention that Gen 1 has so many glitches that were cleaned up later. Missing number! Glitch City!
And to that I say, my point still stands. Yeah, there are differences, but they don't harm his point in any way. And even when there is a difference between the original and the remake that affect his points, he shows a screenshot of the original to demonstrate his points. So this is ultimately a needless nitpick.
It's what introduced the world to Pokemon with its 150 monsters, memorable music, and some interesting locations, with one of the most standout locations being the one and only Lavender Town. The story of this town goes like this. Team Rocket invaded Lavender Town, kidnapped Mr. Fuji, and killed the resident Cubone's mother. Wait. They killed the Cubone's mother. In a kid's game. Rated E for everyone? More like rated E for explicitness.
Yeah, off-screen death. Explicit. Look, I know it was a joke, but what I'm trying to say is, your joke is shit.
I know it clearly was a joke that was meant to be hyperbolized, but fuck it, I'm just gonna argue it like it's not. Well, in the meantime, only giving you the vague critique of your joke was shit.
Oh no, it's like death is a real-life concept or something.
This point is strange. Yeah, death is a real-life concept, however, that doesn't mean it can't be explicit. I mean, running illegal booze and blasting off heads with Tommy guns is a real-life concept, but I doubt you're gonna sit there and tell me that the Mafia series is child-friendly.
Besides, they never show how the Marowak died or describe how the event occurred. They just said that Team Rocket was responsible for killing Cubone's mother. It's sad and admittedly dark, but that doesn't mean it's not kid-friendly.
This point rubs me the wrong way. Let me explain. What is and isn't kid-friendly is subjective. Like, really subjective. And depends a lot on the time. For instance, there was a time where a man and a woman walking into the same room was considered too graphic for all audiences. Meanwhile, in the modern day, we have kids shows and series that would be seen as more mature back in the day, like how Steven Universe deals with death and genocide. Not to mention, are you forgetting the controversy where Pokemon was considered satanic and the whole game was considered inappropriate for kids? The point I'm making is that what is and isn't child-friendly is very subjective, and you just saying, nah, this is child-friendly, is using your opinion to counter ChaosKey's opinion. Honestly, if you wanted some sort of objective basis, you could have checked the ESRB. They have a page that says that a game can be rated E or E10+ if there's mild fantasy violence, and I think the death of Cubone's mother happening off screen could fall under fantasy violence, and still make the game E or E10+ at the worst. It is still subjective and relative to the time, however, citing the ESRB would give you more of a basis than your own feelings.
How is that shit explicit when that Marowak's death happened off screen? You want an example of an actual on-screen death that messed with kids' heads, yet it happened in an E-rated game? Here. Moral of the story, kids, dark stuff can happen in an E-rated game. Hell, it's not just games. There are plenty of G-rated movies where main characters that aren't villains die on screen.
Mufasa! No!
That, for example.
I get where you're coming from, Gale, I really do, but this point kind of falls flat when you realize Pokemon is rated E. So yeah, ChaosKey knows that deaths can happen in a game meant for kids, but he's arguing that in this case, it's explicit. Ignoring that this was originally meant as a hyperbolic joke, how do you know ChaosKey wouldn't also take issues with the examples you brought up? This point is horribly subjective from the word go.
This town is also home to the Pokemon Tower, which is basically a giant Pokemon graveyard. The tower is haunted by ghosts, it's full of Chandlers who are possessed by ghosts, and before you can reach the top floor, you encounter the restless ghost of Cubone's mother, a Marowak. Only by defeating it can you calm this weary spirit. The music, at least in the original games, was a very unsettling tune.
Yeah, the only reason that music was unsettling in the original games was because it was 8-bit. If you listen to the song in the Gen 3 games, it's actually quite calming and nice to listen to, at least in my opinion. Even when I played the original games as a kid, I never found Lavender Town's theme to be creepy or unsettling, just grating on the ears.
First, doesn't matter why it's unsettling, it's still unsettling, at least the ChaosKey. Second, this mention of the Gen 3 Lavender Town shot your earlier point about his footage in the foot, because when the original was more relevant in the case of the music, he used music from the original. Third, are you really trying to counter Chaos's opinion with your own? Well, if that's all it takes, then I can just say I do find it unsettling and call it a day, except I can't because that's dumb and it doesn't work.
And the ghost sprite from the original is kinda creepy with that disturbing derpy face. Ugh.
Derpy equals scary. Duly noted, DDD is now the scariest Kirby boss.
That's the joke.
I really wouldn't say this is the creepiest thing I've ever seen.
Wait, the number 5 entry on a list of creepy things from Pokemon isn't the creepiest thing from Pokemon? Well, color me surprised.
So disturbing
and blue.
Because of the weird creepypastas that have come from it. Seriously, just look up Buried Alive and Lavender Town Syndrome, and you'll know exactly what I mean. It's some very messed up crap, let me tell ya.
If what makes Lavender Town seem so creepy nowadays are the creepypastas, then why not have those appear on the list instead? I mean, you did say anything during your rules, and there's still dark and creepy things relating to Pokemon. Or, at least I assume they are, since you're telling us to look this shit up when you, as the presenter, should be starting that job.
Creepypastas are inherently non-canonical, and if we look at his rules...
These dark and creepy things can range from anything in the series. A moment, an area in the games, specific Pokemon, eerie sounds and music, an NPC, a setting, a backstory, whatever. Just anything that manages to make me feel uneasy or creeped out as all heck.
He said anything creepy in the series, and creepypastas are not inherently part of the series. Also, why does he need to demonstrate this if it's just a side aspect of his overall point? It's a throwaway line that he inherently doesn't need to elaborate on.
As you explore the house, furniture that was blocking your path earlier suddenly moves out of your way for you to explore more. And then, you find the ghost of a girl who rambles on about an everlasting dark dream. And then she asks where her mom, her dad, and her... Wait, Abra? Don't tell me. Is this the same girl? Yep. And when you run into the girl again, she'll talk about how she supposedly heard her father's voice, telling her to stay with him and forget about the lunar wing. Lunar wing. You mean the thing that has to deal with Cresselia? So you reach the final room and discover a lunar wing, only to have the ghost girl appear again, explaining to you that she was waiting on Marvelous Bridge to return the lunar wing to Cresselia. And then she vanishes. So, what exactly happened here? It's obvious the girl died before she returned the lunar wing to Cresselia, but how did she die? Well, while it hasn't been confirmed, it's assumed that Darkrai killed her with its power of inducing nightmares in people's sleep.
Darkrai killing a little girl? Not E for explicit enough. Needs more creepypastas and hyper-realistic blood.
Too hyper-realistic!
Platinum's Darkrai event did it better.
Stopping you right there. Ignoring that this is his list and it's his opinion in terms of what does and doesn't go on it, the Darkrai event you mentioned talks about the player character facing Darkrai and they don't die. Meanwhile, in this event, it talks about a little girl being forced into eternal nightmares. So, a case could be made as to why ChaosKey put this event on his list over the Pokemon Platinum one. Also, opinions don't counter opinions.
The truth? Darkrai isn't actively malicious. What makes the whole Darkrai thing even worse is that it's implied through the "though you don't will it" quote after capturing or defeating Darkrai, that Darkrai doesn't even have full control over its power of sending people and Pokemon into eternal nightmares. You seem to imply that Darkrai is actively malicious in what occurred at the Strange House, when the member card Darkrai event in Platinum shows that Darkrai can't even control its own power.
How? What? All ChaosKey did was explain that Darkrai was putting the girl into eternal nightmares. He's never said it was intentional or malicious. If he did, you don't demonstrate this well, and it really seems like you're reaching for things to complain about.
How is that not any worse than the Strange House event in Black 2 and White 2? Speaking of the Strange House in and of itself, the only reason I had so much to say in response here was because I've seen the member card Darkrai Platinum event for myself. The only reason I had much to say here at all was because I was comparing the Strange House event to something else. To tell the truth, I really don't have much to say solely about the Strange House event. I haven't played Black 2 and White 2 in a while, but seriously, I really don't remember much about my experiences checking out the Strange House when I played through Black 2 and White 2. When I don't even remember much of my own experiences going through that event, then it must not be all that creepy to me. Think about that for a bit.
Good thing it's not your list then.
Wait, hold it, I just had a fucking bruh moment.
It makes sense that it would be Darkrai since the girl says, "everlasting dark dream." And the voice that the girl thought was her father's could have actually been Darkrai trying to keep her away from the lunar wing, which is said to get rid of nightmares. This is easily one of the darkest and most disturbing moments in Pokemon I've seen so far.
Yet it's only number 4. GG on the wording there. G motherfucking G.
So one of the creepiest things in Pokemon is gonna be on a list of top 5 creepiest things in Pokemon? Say it ain't so!
It wouldn't be a dark and creepy Pokemon list without bringing up the Pokedex.
You know, that encyclopedia of Pokemon entries that many fans have reason to believe are written in-game by kids?
You could literally make a top 10 list from just disturbing Pokedex entries alone. But since Jay Witz already does this, I'm just gonna talk about the ones that creep me out the most.
Am I the only one who finds it kinda funny that he's using an obviously hacked Pokédex? I know in the long run it doesn't matter, but this feels out of laziness that could easily bleed over into the rest of the list since it only takes a few seconds to turn out the shiny code in the emulator of your choice. Or hell, just find a regular completed Pokédex.
And this matters why? What issues does this cause for his list? It's just a visual compliment to what he's saying. Zerarick, if you're gonna nitpick, at least make sure they actually affect the video.
Specifically, the Pokedex entries of the Chandelure line. Reading these entries really make me question why these games are rated E.
Because they are optional things that most people are at most going to glance over after they caught the mod. There's also this whole thing of them never happening on screen. Ever. Also, isn't this a cop-out since this is more than 1 for an entry?
Just because something's optional or a small part of the game doesn't make it any less explicit. Second of all, no, it's not a cop-out because they're all part of the same evolutionary line, which is what he's putting on his list.
Litmix's Pokedex entry states that it pretends to be a guide in the dark, when it's really just absorbing the life force of those that follow it to fuel the light on its head. Considering the Celestial Tower and the previously mentioned Strange House are full of Litwick and a bunch of trainers, yeah, I don't want to think about what could happen. Lampint appears right when someone dies and takes their spirit away. They even so much as hang around hospitals for patients to die.
At least they're waiting for the patients to die first instead of killing the patients themselves. I can think of other Pokédex entries where the mons in question are much more malicious than that. Frostlass, for example, freezes its victims and puts the resulting frozen statues on display. Dino eats anything that moves, and its fully evolved form of Hydreigon will attack, consume, or destroy anything and everything it comes across. You're saying that a mon that waits for its victims to die first is creepier than mons that actively pursue living victims?
ChaosKey's list seems to be more directed towards events that are creepy. It could be argued that the Pokemon you brought up are more brutal than creepy. Sure, these can sometimes overlap, but they're still two different things. And perhaps ChaosKey finds the thought of Pokemon taking souls to be worse than Pokemon brutally murdering people. His list, his onions.
Even with subjectivity being taken into account, the type of subjectivity seen in these kinds of lists should still have some sense of logic behind it.
Logic like your own subjective stance as to what's creepy.
Wait, hold it, I just had a fucking bruh moment.
Come on, man, don't tell me you're scared of a little light. Your username references Kingdom Hearts, for frick's sake.
Oh look, ChaosKey is such an egotist that he made his cameo follow his own bullshit ideology of the no swearing club.
In fact, to everyone watching, what's wrong with some of us not wanting to swear? Maybe we're just trying to show more decency than the average person. Maybe we're just trying to set a good example for the youngins. And besides, it's like what Stuttering Craig said in that one top 10. You don't need to cuss to get your point across.
How childish. Even Josh let Alex swear in their co-op instead of forcing him to oblige his ideology.
Okay. And this video is on ChaosKey's channel, and if he doesn't want swearing, that's his choice. For you to talk down to him and call him egotistical for a different opinion on swearing is really childish. This goes back to TP's disclaimer about harsh criticism. Zerarick does this often. He gets so worked up and aggressive over the smallest nitpicks that it comes off as mean, if anything. Look, harsh criticism is still criticism, but how you present it is still important. If you're gonna be aggressive and play up this jackass persona, you need to remember a few things. 1. Don't overplay issues. Makes you come off as more spiteful, if anything. 2. Make sure the aggression is actually warranted. If you lose your shit over every tiny nitpick, you look like you more so want to tear the person down than actually help. And 3. Don't overdo it. It gets to a point where it becomes cringy, stale, and overdone.
Then there's Chandelure. Its white Pokedex entry says that being consumed in its flame burns up the spirit, leaving the body of that person behind. So let me get this straight, Dexter.
Don't you just love when someone talking about the games references something that's only a thing in the anime?
Didn't you guys earlier say that he should put non-canonical creepypastas on the list? So something non-canon is fine, but canon in the anime isn't? Also, he says at the beginning that it's anything in the Pokemon series qualifies for his list, and that includes anime. First, y'all get onto him for not adding something that would break his criteria. Now y'all get onto him for adding something that follows it. Bruh moment indeed.
You're telling me these living, floating light fixtures leave behind dead corpses?
I don't see any mention of Chandelure actively pursuing and killing victims in any of its Pokédex entries, except for maybe its Dex entry in Black, but that's debatable.
When did he say Chandelure actively pursues his victims? Gale, this is the second time I've caught you reaching to make a point. Fucking stop.
And it still doesn't change the fact that the Dino and Hydreigon entries are much more consistent in their claims of how malicious they are.
Doesn't make him any more creepy.
And when these spirits get burned up by its flame, they lose their way and wander the world. Forever. Yeah, suddenly I don't want this Pokemon on my team anymore.
So you're dissuaded from using a Pokemon because of a Pokédex entry, something that not only never happens in-game, but if it were to happen, is easily preventable. Do you by any chance sleep with bubble wrap on?
It's a joke, you fucking cunts!
But if you ask what really creeps me out in this area, it's this.
Ah! Oh wait, sorry, jumped the gun.
This just goes back to what I said about Lavender Town's music. The only reason it sounds so unsettling is because it's in 8-bit. What would have been nice is if you played the version from Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver to see if it still sounds as creepy. In fact, allow me to play that right now. Nowhere near as unsettling if you ask me. Really, I think it just sounds weird.
This doesn't change that the original sounded creepy to ChaosKey. Your onion doesn't debunk his onion. Cease.
If we're gonna bring up scurry music, then why not make reference to Giratina's boss music?
Or the Distortion World theme, let's not forget that one.
What about New Moon Island's theme?
Ooh.
Because his point isn't scurry music is scurry. It's the creepy aspect of hearing random sounds on a radio.
But to keep the show free and to keep the show. Are you fucking serious?
So what could possibly be number 1? While the previous entry made me feel uneasy, at least you can change the radio signal to something else. Whereas number 1, it has to be seen in its entirety if you find it. And it's something that legitimately creeped me out when I saw it.
Prefacing this by mentioning how you can at least change the radio station so you cannot listen to the unknown thing. Keep that in mind because that you can avoid it factor will bite him in the ass after he shows this next one.
Spoilers. No, it doesn't.
What the fuck just happened?
Oh, nice job killing the mood. Again!
Hey look, you have your own sensor. So why couldn't your cameo swear again?
I was just exploring the city, seeing what I could find in every corner and building, only to stumble upon this random building and enter the elevator to reach the next floor.
You say this goes higher than the unknown radio broadcast because you have to experience the scene in its entirety should you find it. My issue is, if part of why it's higher is because you have to see the whole thing, why isn't Lavender Town higher? You have to come across it, climb the Pokemon Tower, and defeat the deceased Marowak in order to obtain the Pokeflute, which is essential to continue with the game. Say what you want about it not being extremely dark or creepy in comparison, but Lavender Town's the only mandatory thing on the list. You never have to traverse through the Strange House, never have to reach Chandelure's Pokédex entry, never have to visit the ruins of Alph, and you never have to use an elevator in a hotel in Lumio City. I'm just saying, if experiencing the whole kit and caboodle is one of your checking criteria, Lavender Town should be higher, if not number 1.
Or perhaps Lavender Town isn't as creepy to him as this is? Maybe the overall creepiness combined with the fact it forces you to sit through it is why this is higher? TP doesn't address this hypothetical. Way to take the least charitable interpretation, you fucking pickle slut.
And then this happens. The music stops, I can't seem to move, and then this Hex girl creeps the freak out of nowhere and says, "No, you are not the one." Yeah, quick question. Who even is this Hex girl? And what is she even doing here? Actually, why is she even here?
Can you say sequel hook?
There's a Hex girl in Hotel Rich, whatever you call it.
Dear God, these videos just give me so many pedantic word nerd moments. Is Rishi's name that fucking hard to pronounce? Like seriously, what the fuck?
And before anyone screams nitpick, let me put it like this. His lack of being unable to pronounce this word can be argued as a lack of research on his part, which can bleed over into his arguments for the placement of the entries.
Wait, hold it, I just had a fucking bruh moment.
Can. If you want to criticize what can happen, you're essentially just making up problems with the video at this point. I can say, oh, your lack of credits to the artist of the artwork you used can show laziness in the rest of your video, but in order for that to be an actual valid complaint, I need to demonstrate that this is an actual issue. Zerarick is essentially saying, maybe there's an issue, but just trust me on this.
What really creeps me out about this is the Hex Girl's model isn't even animating. Combine that with the fact that the music stops and your character doesn't move, it gives the impression the game is glitched. And we all know how creepy glitches can be.
Yeah, but the problem here is that glitches are unintentional.
It gives the impression the game is glitched. It gives the impression I don't know what else to say here. This event came the heck out of nowhere, and it is by far the most disturbing and downright creepiest thing I have seen in Pokemon.
That reminds me, how's this moment even dark? Because nothing about this moment was explained, it doesn't come off as tragic or pessimistic, just creepy. Unless you're referring to dark as mysterious, but several comments you made throughout the video imply a different meaning.
There's some weird, dark, and creepy stuff in this series that makes me question just how kid-friendly it really is. This is easily one of the darkest and most disturbing moments in Pokemon I've seen so far. Reading these entries really make me question why these games are rated E.
You know how this issue would have been better handled? Either just calling this creepy things in Pokemon, or better defining dark.
Perhaps the possibility of the elevator girl being more open-ended is what made it more creepy in ChaosKey's eyes. For all we know, this girl could have been murdered, a lost soul, a ghost, or worse, a furry. In all seriousness, yeah, you can get onto ChaosKey for lack of elaboration, but you don't. You just say it's not scary and leave it there without addressing any possibilities. Since that's honestly all I wanted to cover, what can we take away from this video? Zerarick was overly aggressive and nitpicked to a point where it felt spiteful. Gale was stretching for half her points, and TP, some of his points were iffy, but he was the nicest one here, which was ironic considering he gave the disclaimer at the beginning. Overall, I don't know if I can pinpoint down a specific issue. I can say bias or spite, but I'm not in any of your heads, and I can't make a definitive case for either one. In the future, leave your biases at the door, don't try to debunk opinions with other opinions, and make sure you actually understand what you're arguing against. This issue has plagued a few of my infamous videos. Make sure you actually know the point your target is making, and be sure you're attacking it properly, and not from the angle of, my opinion is more correct.